At 08:31 hours local time, a drone no bigger than a backpack fell out of the gray morning sky and detonated against the back of the most valuable aircraft Russia owned. It had lifted off from a snow-covered field barely 7.5 miles from the center of Minsk. The machine waiting beneath it on the frozen apron was a Russian A-50, a 4-engine flying radar the size of an airliner. Its great dorsal dome, built to watch hundreds of miles of sky over Ukraine. Open reporting puts its value at around $330 million. The drones sent to kill it cost a few thousand between them. That is a kill ratio north of 20,000 to 1, and Russia owned only 9 of these aircraft in its entire fleet. The A-50 is not a weapon, it is an eye. It flies behind the front line, turns its radar on the horizon, and hands Russian commanders the picture they use to aim missiles and warn of incoming strikes. Lose one, and a slice of that picture goes dark, and you cannot simply buy another. Each of these aircraft takes a small army of specialists to run, something like 19 people per plane, from the pilots up front to the radar and electronics operators working the consoles in the back. The airframes are old, the radars are hard to replace, and the line that once built them barely exists anymore. Every A-50 Russia flies is, in effect, one it can never get back. This particular aircraft had been sitting at Machulishchy Air Base for 54 days, flying mission after mission, 12 sorties in all, while the men who guarded it grew comfortable. 7.5 miles from the capital, ringed by some of the best air defenses in the country, it was, on paper, one of the safest places that plane could be. That comfort was the target. For 2 weeks before the strike, small civilian drones, the kind anyone can buy in a shop, had been drifting over the airfield. They carried cameras, not warheads. A quadcopter over a military base looked like a nuisance, if anyone noticed it at all, and that was the whole point. 2 weeks is a long time to be patient over an enemy airfield. Every flight was a risk. A dead battery, a gust of wind, one alert sentry who decided the toy overhead was worth a second look, and the whole plan could have ended before it began. But the operators kept the drones unarmed and unremarkable day after day, learning the base the way a burglar learns a house, which lights come on and when, who walks the fence and how often, where the response would come from once the alarm finally sounded. One of them flew low over the A-50, lined up on the radar dome and settled onto it, landing on the back of a strategic radar plane, resting there a moment, then lifting off again, unseen and untouched. It brought back everything. The exact parking spot, the rhythm of the perimeter guards, the road the fire trucks would use, the squat fuel store 100 yards from the aircraft's nose. The defenders never reacted, because nothing about a slow little camera drone matched what their systems were built to fear. They were watching for fighter jets and cruise missiles. Nobody had told the radar, the missile crews, or the jammers to worry about something you could carry under one arm. Which raises the question the whole operation turned on. If the best air defenses in Belarus stood within sight of that aircraft, why, when the strike finally came, did every last one of them stay silent? The launch was almost quiet. Out in a snow-covered field, the operators sat behind screens with the base still miles away, and one by one the drones rose off the ground and turned toward Machulishchy. No engines to hear at that distance, no muzzle flash, no signature a sentry would notice, just small machines climbing into a gray winter morning and settling onto a heading. They came in low and slow, barely 35 miles an hour, hugging the tree line, the unhurried pace of something that had no intention of announcing itself. And the first thing they had to beat was the layer built to see everything. The base's wide-area surveillance radar, the outer eye sweeping the whole sky around the field. On paper, nothing crossed that fence unseen. A radar like this is built to pull a fighter jet out of the sky at the edge of the horizon, tens of miles away, and to hold hundreds of moving contacts at once, refreshing the picture many times a second. It is a magnificent instrument for the war it was designed to fight. But that strength comes with a bargain. To keep from shrieking every time a truck rolls down a road or wind drags a branch across its beam, the radar is deliberately tuned to throw away slow, low, ground-hugging returns as clutter, background junk not worth a human's glance. Think of the automatic doors at the front of a supermarket. They're set to ignore a cart drifting slowly past, so they don't fly open all day long. Walk in at a normal pace and they open. Creep past at a crawl and you're invisible to them. The drones came in at exactly the speed those doors are trained to overlook. They weren't sneaking under the radar. The radar was staring straight at them and deleting them on purpose, hundreds of times a second, because everything it knew told it that a slow little smear near the ground was noise. The numbers made it worse for the defenders. In the fraction of a second the system spent classifying each return and dumping it as clutter, a drone closed another few hundred feet of ground. Detection wasn't losing a race. Detection wasn't even in the race. The threat was being erased faster than it could ever have been reported. So the outer eye said nothing. No alarm. And for a stretch it looked like the hardest layer had simply been switched off, which was the most dangerous illusion on the field, because the next layer wasn't a passive filter that could be fooled by staying quiet. It was a launcher with missiles already standing in their tubes, and it would see these drones perfectly. The only question was why. Seeing them, it never managed to fire. Then a short-range Tor M2 battery caught them. The Tor is a serious machine, a tracked launcher built for exactly this job, swatting low-flying targets out of the sky at point-blank ranges. 4 missiles ready at once, a reaction time measured in seconds. It locked onto the lead drone and began building a firing solution. For a moment, the whole operation should have ended right there. But the Tor has a flaw. Its missiles need roughly the first half-mile of flight just to arm and stabilize. Anything closer than that, and the launcher is holding a knife it can't open in time. A boxer with a long reach owns the room, until you step inside his arms, where all that reach becomes dead weight and he can't land a clean punch. The drones were already inside, and they hadn't done it by accident. They'd come in on a line that put them under the floor before the Tor could resolve them into a shot. The math ran against the crew in real time. A drone crossing that last half mile at 35 miles an hour clears it in a little over a minute, and the firing solution needed nearly all of that same minute to finish. The two clocks ran side by side, and the range collapsed faster than the solution came together. By the time the launcher was ready, the target had already dropped beneath the height and distance where its missiles meant anything. A weapon that could kill a jet miles away could not touch a hobby drone a few hundred yards off its own tracks. So the Tor handed the problem sideways, to the jammers. A counter-drone team swung toward the threat, hunting for the radio link between the drones and their operators, trying to sever it. On paper, the jammer wins this fight easily. It can drown a small drone's control signal from more than a mile off. But a jammer is not a light switch. It's full cycle, detect the signal, classify it, lock on and blast, runs anywhere from half a minute to 2 full minutes. The drones simply refused to stay inside that final mile long enough to hand it the time. And here the operation turned on its head. As the jamming bit late, 2 of the lead drones drifted off their lines, crossed the aircraft's nose, and slammed into the fuel store 100 yards beyond it. For half a second it read like failure, drones thrown away on a shed. Then the fuel let go. A wall of flame climbed off the building, black smoke rolled flat across the apron, and every alarm on the base went off at once. That was the moment the defense started losing to itself. Fire and rescue trucks tore out of their bays and drove straight across the open ground in front of the aircraft. Ground crews ran toward the flames. Smoke drifted between the rooftop guards and the sky and turned the morning into a gray wall. Men who had been hunting a few small contacts were suddenly fighting a fire, heads down, backs turned, every reflex pulling them toward the blaze and away from the threat. The miss hadn't wasted a thing. It had blinded the base and carved open a clean corridor. And somewhere behind it, still tracking in at that same patient, 35 miles an hour, were the drones that actually mattered, already inside the gap before anyone thought to look for them. They crossed the perimeter while the whole base faced the wrong way. The Tor crew tried again and hit the same wall as before. Targets already beneath the floor, missiles that couldn't arm, a solution that finished a heartbeat too late to matter. The jammer crew swung toward the new headings and ran out of seconds all over again. A cycle that needs half a minute cannot chase drones that give it 15. One control feed flickered and died, and it changed nothing. The machines simply flew the heading already loaded into them, no longer needing a hand on the other end at all. The perimeter guards saw them last, at 200 yards, a handful of seconds of flight. They raised their rifles and found the problem waiting behind the targets. The burning fuel store, the rescue trucks crossing open ground personnel scattered across the apron, the aircraft itself. Every lane of fire was full of their own people and their own chaos. To shoot the drone was to shoot into all of it. For the few seconds that decided everything, they held, and those few seconds were the whole margin the drones had ever needed. The first reached the aircraft's back and struck the base of the great radar dome, the single component that turned a hollow airframe into a working set of eyes. The blast tore into the dome, and the antenna faces packed beneath it, shredding the one part that defined the entire machine. The second came in over the forward fuselage, dropping toward the cockpit and the mission bay behind it, where the wiring and processors live that turn a spinning dish into a usable picture of the sky. 2 drones, 2 hits, 2 places, both landing on the exact organs that made the plane worth $330 million instead of scrap metal. The dome that had watched all of Ukraine's sky went dark in front of the very defenses built to keep it safe. Every one of them had worked, not one had failed. And that, more than any single explosion, was the thing Russia would have to sit with. So what did a few $1,000s of shop-bought drones actually buy? Not a fireball swallowing the aircraft whole, whatever the smoke suggested that morning. What they bought was 2 precise wounds in the 2 places that mattered most: the radar dome and the forward fuselage where the mission systems live. Enough to take the eye offline. Satellite imagery in the days after showed the airframe still sitting largely intact, and within a week, the aircraft lifted off Machulishchy under its own power, not returning to duty, but limping back to Russia for repairs it could not get in Belarus. That is the honest measure of the strike. Not a plane erased, but a plane broken and pulled from the board, one of only 9 Russia had, and one of an even smaller handful carrying the upgraded radar. For a fleet that thin, taking a single aircraft out of rotation for months is not a scratch. It is a hole in the picture, and it was a hole Russia would feel far beyond Machulishchy. An aircraft like this doesn't just watch one patch of sky, it anchors the radar picture for whole sectors of the front, and freeing up a replacement means pulling one from somewhere else that suddenly has to make do without. A fleet of 9 has no slack in it. Every plane grounded for repair is a gap that has to be covered by tired crews flying the survivors harder, and the harder you push a rare, aging aircraft, the sooner the next one breaks. And that is the part that should worry Moscow more than the repair bill. The A-50's entire job is to see what's coming. On the morning of the 26th, it could not see the thing crawling toward its own tail. Every layer built to protect it, the horizon-scanning radar, the missile battery, the jammers, the men on the roof, did exactly what its engineers intended. The surveillance net filtered slow movers as clutter. The Tor guarded the distances it was built to guard. The jammer ran the cycle it was designed to run. Not one of them failed. They were simply all built for fighter jets and cruise missiles, in a war that had quietly started sending backpacks instead. That's the uncomfortable lesson sitting on that apron 7.5 miles from Minsk. You can spend hundreds of millions on the finest air defense in the country, arrange it in perfect overlapping rings, and still lose the thing in the middle to a machine bought over a shop counter. Because the most dangerous weapon on the field that day wasn't the fastest or the most expensive. It was the one nobody had been taught to fear. If this breakdown was worth your time, subscribe. We take one strike apart like this every week. And tell me in the comments, when a $300 million radar can't see a hobby drone touching its own hull, is the problem the hardware or the doctrine built around it?